In 67, the English established Jamestown in Virginia, the first permanent English settlement in North America. But survival in early Virginia depended on modern courage. It also depended on what people wore. Clothing revealed rank, labor, and identity, from practical garments for daily survival to embodied fashions that signaled wealth and status. Dress reflected the structure of colonial society. To understand what people wore is to understand how early America began. Hello everyone. Lecture series on the history of American fashion, Part 1. The founding of the Virginia colony and its clothing. Lecturer is researcher in American fashion history, Masako Hamada in Japan. This lecture explores how the founding of Virginia shaped colonial society and how clothing became a visible sign of hierarchy, identity, and life in early America. Chapter 1. The 13 American Colonies and Regional Characteristics. This is a map of 13 colonies. The 13 colonies are historically divided into 3 district sections, each developing unique socio-economic structures that were reflected in their clothing. Northern New England was settled as follows. New Hampshire was settled in 1629. Connecticut was settled in 1662. Rhode Island was settled in 1663. Massachusetts was settled in 1691. A society of small-scale farmers based on the town system of land ownership. Mid-Atlantic was settled as follows. Maryland was settled in 1632. New York was settled in 1664. Pennsylvania was settled in 1681. Delaware was settled in 1701. New Jersey was settled in 1702. Characterized by the manor system and the patron system, that land grant system, producing grain, timber, and livestock. According to this patent, shareholders who settled 50 immigrants aged 15 or older within 4 years, with at least 1/4 of them arriving in the first year, were granted a patent, and the holders of these rights, that is, patentees, were granted land primarily along the Hudson and Delaware rivers, 8 miles wide and of unlimited depth. Southern colonies were settled as follows. Virginia was settled in 1607. North Carolina was settled in 1713. South Carolina was settled in 1713. Georgia was settled in 1732, based on large-scale land ownership and the plantation system facilitated by the headright system and reliance on black enslaved labor. The headright system and large-scale land ownership and plantation management, land grant system widely practiced during the early settlement period of the British colonies in North America. Typically, 50 acres of land were granted to each settler. Chapter 2. Early Colonial History and Characteristics of Clothing, Virginia Colony. Section 1. The Founding of the Virginia Colony, 1607. Establishment. Founded by the London Company, later the Virginia Company, under the first charter of 1606. Arrival. In May 1607, 3 ships, the Susan Constant, Godspeed, and Discovery enter Chesapeake Bay with approximately 120 passengers. Demographics. The first settlers included gentlemen, landowners, professionals, wealthy merchants, and common people, servants, tradesmen, such as carpenters, smiths, and tailors. This is a reconstructed Susan Constant, which is on Chesapeake Bay present time. I'm on the ship with young boys. I also on the ship with a guide who are in 17th century sailor's attire. Section 2. Clothing characteristics by social class. Early colonial Virginia. Clothing served as a clear indicator of social status in the Virginia colony. Wealthy upper class wore luxury goods imported directly from the home country, England. Lower class servants and the poor wore homespun clothing sewn at home. Enslaved people wore liveried, hand-me-down or clothes produced domestically. Section 3. Adaptation to the environment and clothing as a status symbol. Despite the initial difficulty of the starving time, the colony survived through the distribution of land to settlers and the successful cultivation of tobacco. Climate adaptation. Captain John Smith recorded that while summers were as hot as Spain and winters as cold as England and France, the climate generally suited the English constitution. Persistence of European fashion. Settlers maintained heavy, elaborate European styles such as doublet and trunk hose to preserve their dignity and high social status. Clothing functioned as a vital status symbol in the New World. Reference. Number 1. Edward Warwick and Henry C. Pitts, Early American Costume, T.M. Dent and Sons Limited, London, 1929. Number 2. Edward Warwick, Henry C. Pitts and Alexander Wyckoff, Early American Dress, The Colonial and Revolutionary Periods, Bonanza Books, New York, 1965. Here, I should talk about the lack of physical clothing samples, since no actual garments worn in the Virginia colony during the American colonial era have survived. The illustrations featured in the references listed above serve as valuable clues. It is important to note that the presentation and explanation of the illustration constitute a significant part of this video. I visited Jamestown, 1999, July 17. I'd like to show you many photographs I took at this Jamestown. This is a statue of Pocahontas. This is church. This is inside of this church. This is Princess Pocahontas. This is a shield of England. This is a portrait painting of Captain John Smith and its description. This is a statue of Captain John Smith. These are wild geese. This is a house of Powhatan. Powhatan is an American Indian tribe. This is a description of Powhatan Indian village. This is very old church at Jamestown. She's a guide at this colony. She wears 7th century clothing and speaks 7th century English and guides many tourists who visit here. Chapter 3. Clothing in the Virginia Colony. Section 1. Early colonial menswear from 1607 to 1620. Menswear of this period reflected the elaborate and rigid styles of the Elizabethan and Jacobean eras. Core garments, the doublet, jacket with separate sleeves, jerkin, worn over the doublet for protection, and trunk hose, puffy breeches. Colors, styles ranged from standing fan-shaped collars to ruffs and the folding band, flat collar. Protective gear. Due to the dangerous life, settlers used buff jerkin made of buffalo hide to repel arrows, and various forms of armor, helmet like the morion or bargonet, breastplates, and gauntlets. It is said that the garments worn by the gentlemen who settled in Virginia were made of luxurious materials such as silk, satin, brocade, velvet, gold and silver braids, lace, and fine linen, and were rich in color. Even today, we can imagine the sight of colonists moving about in multicolored garments in shades of scarlet and gold, against the backdrop of the colony's dark forests, flower-filled woodlands, and rivers. Even today, we can imagine the sight of colonists moving about in multicolored garments in shades of scarlet and gold, against the backdrop of the colony's dark forests, flower-filled woodlands, and rivers. However, the stiff padded doublets and baggy trunk hose, long favored by the nobility of Western Europe, must surely have been clothing that restricted movement and made it difficult for the colonists to carry out their daily activities. Consequently, these elaborate and impractical garments gradually evolved in colonial life toward a more practical style characterized by looser silhouettes and simpler decorations. Men's upper-class attire in early 17th century Virginia. Reference number 1, page 35. A doublet with separate sleeves. The collar is a standing fan-shaped style. The lower garment is a pair of trunk hose. A jacket with separate sleeves. A decorative collar with pleats. The lower garment is a pair of Venetian-style shorts. Upper garment, flat collar, cape, leg wear, trunk hose. Pretty decorative collar, lace flat collar, folding band, hat with a brim, sword guard. Portrait of John Smith. Jerkin, made of buffalo leather, a short piece of military clothing, worn over a doublet. It was well suited to a life of danger, effective at deflecting arrows. Boots, typical footwear of the time, suitable for coastal wetlands and dense thicket. Reference number 1, page 41. Armor. Reference number 1, page 45. Armor, helmet, gauntlets, greaves, crotch guards, knee guards, iron boots, sword, using helmet, grass-lined surcoat, Morion helmet, doublet, trousers, boots, sword, chest plate, bargonet, doublet, knee-length trousers, boots, sword, Morion-style helmet, Burgundian helmet, sword guard. Section 2, Early Colonial Women's Wear, from 1609 to 1620. Records of women's clothing in the earliest years are scarce, and the first significant group of women did not arrive until 1609 and 1619. Upper-class style followed the farthingale fashion hoop skirts, featuring tightly laced bodices and standing fan-shaped lace collars. Middle-class style featured full skirt that opened in the front to reveal an underskirt, bodices with a pointed waistline, and decorative lace or ruff colors. The difficulty of studying women's clothing. No records exist. Speculation. The costume in the portrait of Pocahontas. Women's clothing from 1609 to 1620. Collar, blouse, skirt, hair, shawl, cape, gloves, muff shoes. Portrait of Pocahontas. Women's clothing of the upper and middle classes in early 17th century Virginia. Reference number 1, page 49. An upper-class woman, farthingale-style costume. A flared, fan-shaped lace collar, a tightly laced bodice, a featured fan. A middle-class woman. Her full skirt is open at the front, revealing her underskirt. Her bodice is laced, with a pointed tip at the lower center front, a pleated decorative collar. She also draped a rectangular piece of fabric over her shoulder. A middle-class woman. Her full skirt is open at the front, revealing her petticoat. Her bodice features lace along the center front, with a lower center front tapering to a point, a lace stand-up collar. Section 3. Men's clothing of royalists from 1620 to 1675. During the 1620s, against the turbulent backdrop of the 30 Years' War, European men's fashion underwent a steady and practical transformation. Clothing was systematically refined, shedding the rigid constraints of the past in favor of designs that allowed for greater mobility and ease of movement. This shift first emerged within military attire. By 1630, these functional adaptations has crystallized into a distinct style in England, the iconic costume of the Cavaliers, the royalist supporters of King Charles I during the lead-up to the English Civil War. Cavalier fashion and the transition to practicality from 1620 to 1675. It was only in 1649, following the execution of King Charles I at Whitehall, that the royalists began their exodus from England to the colony of Virginia. The term royalist was not a marker of social rank or pedigree. Rather, it encompassed a diverse spectrum of people across all classes and backgrounds, unified by their political allegiance. Regardless of their original status, these exiles arrived in Virginia proudly displaying Cavalier fashion by adorning themselves with elaborate ribbons and lace. They signaled their unwavering loyalty to the fallen king and the cause they had left behind. While these styles were not entirely unknown in Virginia, the arrival of such a large, elegant wave of men and women, all adorned in their signature ribbons, ignited a definitive shift in the colony's fashion and social customs. This aesthetic proved to be a perfect match for the plantation lifestyle, characterized by its emphasis on leisure and refined abundance. Over time, what began as a political statement evolved into the quintessential mode of the Virginia upper class, mirroring their social standing through sophisticated decorative attire. Royalist men's clothing from 1620 to 1675. Reference number 1, page 54. The sleeves and body of the top feature slits. The waist is adorned with a bow, and the lower center front is pointed with a hanging collar. The top features slits. The waist is loose-fitting, and it has a flat collar. Shirley Plantation, Charles City, Virginia, United States. This is the inside this plantation house. The top is simple and featured a flat collar. Reference number 1, page 55. This loose-fitting top features slits running down the entire front, flat collar with lace trim. Section 4. Leg wear worn by royalists on 7th century Southern American plantation. Section 4. Leg wear worn by royalists on 7th century Southern American plantation. Reference number 1, page 63. Reference number 1, page 63. Section 5. Women's clothing at plantation from 1620 to 1675. Unlike the aesthetic Puritans of New England, the plantation ladies of the Cavalier class placed immense value on their appearance, treating fashion with meticulous care and interest. While they initially embraced practicality and simplicity, during the grueling early years of establishing the colony and its plantations, this austerity was short-lived. As the settlement stabilized, these women discarded their plain attire in favor of the latest London trends. They looked toward the English capital as their ultimate stylistic compass, ensuring that their wardrobes reflected the most current and sophisticated European modes. Reference number 1, page 77. Form-fitting bodies. The sleeves feature narrow vertical strips of fabric tied in above. High-waisted bodies with an oval-shaped hem hanging down and a square neckline. A snug-fitting top, the sleeves are puffy and the length is shorter. In stark contrast to the aesthetic Puritans of New England, the plantation mistresses of the Cavalier class viewed fashion with profound interest and meticulous attention. For these women, clothing was not merely a necessity, but an essential expression of their identity and heritage. During the grueling early years of establishing the colony and its vast plantations, they initially adopted a more practical, modest approach to dress. However, as stability and wealth grew, this temporary austerity was quickly abandoned. They eagerly turned their gaze back toward England, adopting the latest high fashion trends arriving from London to ensure their status was reflected in every stitch of their attire. Chapter 4. Summary. By the 18th century, the expansion of the plantation slave system in Virginia created a unique economic framework centered entirely on tobacco. Fashion and clothing evolved in perfect synchronization with system. While the colony possessed ample raw materials such as silk, flax, hemp, and wool from its earliest days, a self-sustaining textile industry phase take root. Instead of developing local manufacturing, Virginia's economic energy was funneled almost exclusively into tobacco production. This tobacco economy dictated that raw goods be exported to England in exchange for finished luxury goods, effectively stifling to the growth of domestic colonial industry in favor of agricultural wealth. Thank you for listening. Preview of the next episode, Clothing in the American Colonial Era, Part 2, the founding of the New England colonies and their clothing.